Hey, I'm digging that intro. I love it.
I played around with something new and I was like, oh, shucks now.
I really like it.
Yeah, thanks so much, you guys. We are back, as you can see. I'm excited about just having this conversation again because I've missed everybody. We got some same old faces and a new face. So you guys, I'm Dr. H, the Global Mentor Coach. As you all know, we got Trey Amazing, and this season we have none other than Miss Paula Nicole Good joining us. She's gonna bring just as much funk and fun and excitement and flavor and all of that y'all used to on the show. We like to have fun. This is really gonna be a black conversation because it's always a black conversation. But it's basically, a whole conversation with us in mind. And I'm excited to be starting the season off with a pretty juicy topic that I feel is definitely relatable, but it comes home to me. And I thought that it's a perfect time amidst all of the loss that we've all experienced, especially since COVID. I feel like everybody can relate to this topic of dealing with grief and loss and how it affects our relationships. I don't care if it's an intimate relationship, platonic, even your professional relationships, how you deal and interact with people, period. It's important that you know how to, first of all, acknowledge that you're grieving or that you have experienced loss. And I don't think that we look at loss in the context of um, anything beyond, when somebody dies. You know what I mean? I think that a lot of times we only grieve when somebody dies, but what about, giving yourself an opportunity to grieve a business relationship? You know what I'm saying? An opportunity or a promotion on a job that you didn't get, and then they want to turn around and have you train the person, or, or even of divorce. You know what I'm saying? Or anything, or 20-year friendship. Lots of different things happen, and then obviously we have collective grief as a black community, right? Dealing with all of what we see with, every time a black person is killed at the hands of law enforcement or something like that. We deal with grief and loss on a regular basis, and how we as our community deal with grief and loss, it's really not healthy. Like, in a lot of ways, it's not healthy because we either hold it in because we got to be strong, or we're taught all of these wrong things about what it is to be. You got to be strong. You got to be strong for the family. You got to be strong for this. You got to hold it in, but that's killing us. You know what I mean? Like, it don't make sense. And then you want to know why you lashing out at other people, or you're triggered on every hand, like every little thing is triggering you. That's because you are holding stuff in that you need to let out. But I think that it's important to have a conversation about it, and figure out what's the best way to deal with that and what that looks like in your relationships, because it's wild. You know what I mean? It's wild. Paul, unmute. You don't have to mute with us, girl. Stay unmuted, girl. Stay unmuted.
Have some background noise here, so I'm deciding to unmute.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's it. You know what I mean? I think that, so that's what tonight's conversation is about. We just gonna have a black ass conversation about grief and loss, and what it does to your relationships, and what happens when you don't allow yourself to grieve. So for instance, if you've been divorced, or if you've, what I'm saying, you and a friend that you've been friends with since elementary school or 20 years fell out, and whatever the case may be, how do you deal with that? You know what I mean? Like, when you don't allow yourself that space, what does that look like in your relationships? It creeps in a lot of different ways. So I'm gonna go to Paula and let her weigh in, and let us know her thoughts.
Yeah. Well, I think when it just comes to grief in general, regardless of what it is, it's so challenging because before even dealing with grief, we're taught not to be in touch with our emotions. Whether you're a man or whether you're a woman, even though women are allowed to have emotions, when you look at us as Black women, like you said, we're pushed to be strong, we're pushed to be stoic. Even, I'm a nurse, so even in healthcare, I see a lot of women, they're holding in their pain, they're not speaking about it. You're taught, I mean, just in the medical field, there's this whole thing that we're trying to break with it. When Black people are saying that they're in pain, a lot of times we're not showing it, we're speaking it, and because our physical expression doesn't match our words, a lot of times we're not believed, but it's because, we're taught not to show those emotions. So when you do have something heavy land into your plate, such as divorce, loss of a friend, death, because you've never allowed yourself to deal with those emotions, when they're super heavy, you really don't know how to deal with them. So you deal with them in various ways. A lot of times you start avoiding them, or you just start doing some uncharacteristic things. And with that, it's like you start acting out of character. And because you still haven't figured out how to just say, I'm hurting, or, I'm just so sad, or you feel like you're supposed to get over it. Time will heal all wounds, or how do I push through this? Instead of, allowing yourself to deal with that pain, you end up, just having so many other issues. But we have to get to the root of things, and that is allowing yourself to feel all of your emotions, not just a few here or there, because you can't filter them out, but feel all of your emotions.
Yeah. I agree. I think part of it is, I think sometimes in feeling emotions, sometimes we feel weak. You know what I mean? And I think that that's part of the challenge, that people feel weak, or they feel like, okay, this gonna lead me down the wrong road, because in the era of social media, everybody's a therapist. And they'll tell you all kinds of whackness. And it's like, okay, oh, if you do that, you're gonna be depressed, and you're gonna be that, and it's gonna be that, and you don't want to be. Show me how long you've been a clinical psychologist.
Right.
Show me this, because you know what I mean. Like, it's really wild. It really is. It's really wild. Hey, Jeff. Shout out to Jeff. Y'all, Jeff been my rock this week. If y'all don't know, my cousin was killed in a hit and run Sunday night. And it's just been devastating this week. But Jeff has been my rock. So my brother, you, my man, 50 grand. But yeah, social media philosophers will have you all messed up about grief and loss. And it's stupid. You know what I mean? Like, some of the stuff that they say is like really wild. And it's really crazy. So I'm gonna go to Troy, and Trey, get in here and talk to us and let us know what you think about. Hey, Pastor Renee, by the way, I see you, Renee Roberts. Shout out to you. But go ahead, Trey, get in here and chat us up.
Oh, we have a pastor listening. Yeah, we gonna need some Jesus.
Oh, well, well, she did it. No, she real, like, she keep it all the way real. She'll let you know I ain't here to indoctrinate nobody. We gonna keep it real and tell you. She was like, y'all need to get over this and stop with this foolishness. So she's
one of them Jesus the homie kind of path.
we cool. No, we cool.
No, that's what's up. Well, first and foremost, the most sincerest condolences to you and your family. I didn't know you experienced loss in your family, so I'm really sorry to hear about that. I know that can be hard. I know how difficult it is to experience the loss of, a family member, especially if it's someone that you were close to.
Yeah.
So, I definitely want to, start the show by saying that, as far as how, I know I've dealt with loss before. I've dealt with death in the family. I've dealt with divorce. I've dealt with depression. You name it, I probably dealt with it on some kind of level. And I'm aware, I've always acknowledged that there are both healthy and unhealthy ways to deal with grief and loss and rejection and, so many other negative things. And I've dabbled in both the positive and the negative. I most certainly know what it's like. I'm a Black man that encourages other Black men to go to therapy. Regardless, people need to understand that these are the inroads that we're making to destigmatize therapy, particularly destigmatizing for Black men. Like, bros, it doesn't make you any less of a man, don't make you any less Black to go talk to someone. It's all good to go talk to the pastor if you want. You want to go to church, you want to pray, do that in conjunction with a therapist. It doesn't hurt you as a Black man, doesn't hurt you as a man, doesn't hurt you as a Christian. It doesn't make you any less. But I understand, I certainly have lived long enough to where I know, and I've had those conversations, those locker room conversations where men don't feel that, expressing their feelings and emotions is masculine, because we're taught that it's not masculine. You know,
Yeah.
you can express emotions like anger, um, but in terms of actually purging those feelings, yeah, even it's 2023. A lot of us, manhood is at an all-time premium. We don't do that. You know, we
Yeah.
don't. You know, we don't always feel confident and comfortable. Even if it's a friend that we've known for years, we don't always feel comfortable to just be vulnerable and let it out. And it's not that you don't necessarily feel like your friend won't understand. It's just you don't want to be seen as less than. Um, you know, you don't want to be seen as because at the end of the day, like being a man, one of the worst pejorative, statements or insults you can make towards a man is to diminish or degrade his manhood.
Yeah.
You know, we do that as little boys. You know, growing up, when you grow up, you want to insult another boy, you call him a girl. You know, you say he's being feminine,
Right.
and it's not necessarily, even from my standpoint, it's not necessarily a slight on women, but as a man, you don't want to be viewed as a woman
Yeah.
or feminine. You want to be viewed as a man because that's what you are.
Right.
So you're gonna have the big brothers and the fathers, the uncles, the guys at the barbershop, the frat brothers, and everybody who are going to indoctrinate you to believe that as a man, this is how you express yourself.
Yeah.
This is how you can express yourself and still maintain the mantle of manhood. When you start expressing yourself this other way, you begin to be viewed and perceived as, well, that's more feminine. That's what
Hmm.
women do, or that's what white people do, or that's what non-hetero men do. So you're
Right.
constantly being told, even though these are proven ways, the best and most effective ways to deal with your loss and whatever loss you may be experiencing, these are most effective ways. There's still ways that other men challenge because they
Right.
feel like it encroaches on masculinity and manhood. I mean, like I said, I know what it's like to go to therapy. I know what it's like to pray. I also know what it's like to go swimming in vodka and to go playing in the quote unquote grass.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I've done it all. I've done the healthy and unhealthy. I've had my moments of enlightenment. I've had my moments of pure drunkenness.
Yeah.
Um, so I completely understand. I mean, regardless of what the peanut gallery on social media may believe. I mean, when it's all said and done, this is your health, this is your mental health. You need to take care of it. And if you are legitimately experiencing something as serious as grief, and grief can be pungent, grief can be tangible. I mean, you need to lift that off your
Yeah.
chest. You need to lift it off your shoulders in the most healthy way possible. Otherwise, you will implode. You will
Yeah.
physically, mentally, and spiritually implode.
Yeah. You're gonna end up pushing people away too.
Oh,
And
absolutely, absolutely.
you're gonna end up pushing people away, even some of the people that you feel like you can lean on, because you're lashing out and you're not finding a healthy outlet. You know what I mean? Like it can go too much of anything, good or bad, can destroy you. It's gonna absolutely destroy you, and you're trying to figure out how to get there. And I'm just gonna go ahead and dive into it real quick, because this is what's gonna probably get people to actually really take it seriously. It affects your sex life. It affects everything, because at the end of the day, sex is beyond hunching. It starts up here. Like, it really is. It's very much mental. We've said that like repeatedly in episodes previously. And so if you don't deal with that, any type of loss and any type of grief, that grief comes with loss, period. Anytime you experience a loss and you don't allow yourself proper time to grieve, whether that's, I'm gonna take up kickboxing, whether getting, like when my grandmother died, like I didn't know what I was gonna do, be honest. Like I thought I was gonna be okay, but it was just so consuming. And then for me last year, I lost three family members within 4 months. My grandmother died 2 weeks after her, my uncle died, and then 4 months later my other uncle died. It was just crazy. And Piff gave me some great advice. She was like, the one thing that you're not doing, that you probably need to do, is get in your kitchen, because the kitchen is my happy place. And baby, I did, and it helped me so much. You have to find your outlet, whether it's the kitchen, whether it's being creative, like maybe you like to sew, paint, whatever, write, or whatever. But I think that one of the things you have to do is find that outlet to be able to work through it. You know what I mean? It wasn't just You know what I'm saying? Like it wasn't just to get through that moment, because it's grief comes in waves. Anything can trigger
Mhm.
you. You know what I'm saying? Like months later, I'm training with my trainer, and it was just some people who just lack basic manners that pissed me off, that took me to another level, because I was just like, really? You know what I mean? And so, but still really learning to grieve, because at the end of the day, you're not the only person on this earth. Like you go come into
Mhm.
contact with other humans, like it or not, and you never know who you will meet down the road that you mistreated during in your grief, that you may need another time. You know what I'm saying? That you encounter another time, and they remember that. You know what I'm saying? And they may not be forgiven. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like people aren't always as forgiving. So I think that in that regard, you got to think about it, and how it's a domino effect. It affects more than just one thing. It affects everything about your relationship. You know what I mean? Paula, what's your thoughts?
Um, you're right. And I just want to share my unique experience because for me, it just affected my identity. So I lost my mom, I want to say about 2 years ago, next month. And for me, it was a different type of grief because my relationship with my mom was different than most people would think. You know, a lot of people think have a good relationship with their mom. I didn't. I had that mother wound. And I spent a good portion of my adult life wanting my mom. So
Mm-hmm.
when she left this world, for me, it was, well, I'm never going to have the mom I wanted. In addition to that, I had to deal with the fact that I was listening to other family members, other cousins who did have her in the manner that I had wanted. And so I had to deal with that anger and disappointment and make sure it didn't turn into animosity.
Yeah.
Luckily for me, you know, being a coach, I was surrounded by coaches, so I was able to have that direct access to healing. But for me, a lot of my identity was, you know, related to the relationship I had with my mom, the challenges I had with my mom. I was trying not to be a certain way. And that was my identity. So when she left this world, I no longer had to be like her or different from her. There was no resistance there for me anymore. So I did have a bit of an identity crisis. But with
Mm.
that, I was able to learn how to grieve authentically. And for me, it was being honest, it was being truthful.
Yeah.
And I think Jeffrey had made a comment about how when he had to go through grieving, there were triggers from the people around him. Well, one thing
Hmm.
that happened, especially with our families, is they feel like you should grieve a certain way. No matter what your experience is with that person, you should only say good things. You should only have those good things, those good memories. And I had family members tell me that, but I was in that place where I'm like, I'm speaking my truth. Everyone had their unique experience with my mom, and I respect that, but you also have to respect mine. And my memories, they're mixed. And I
Hmm.
think it's so important that as we grieve, we are authentic with who we are, be honest with our experiences, not go with, you know, what the labels tell us we should be. Oh, you should be crying, or you shouldn't move on. You should do this, and we become inauthentic. And when we're inauthentic, we can't truly grieve the way we need to. And even now, like you said, I have those waves where I do see things and I see people, having their times with their mom. And I'm just like, dang, I still will never get that. And that's my grief that I have to work through. But
Yeah.
I'm honest with it. And I don't have to announce it or anything. But if someone were to ask me, I'm not going to lie. And
Right.
it makes people uncomfortable sometimes. And I have to accept that they're uncomfortable because of their feelings, but I'm not going to be uncomfortable with mine. And I think that's something that is lost, especially just in the Black culture of, just being honest with the fact that maybe your relationships weren't, the icing on the cake, or maybe there's someone that you're grieving a little bit harder, where people would are wondering like, why are you crying over that person? And you just have to be honest. But this the lack of inauthenticity that's expected of us when we grieve is a huge problem, especially immediately when you're surrounded by family and friends.
Yeah.
I just really think that plays a role, and no one really talks about it.
Yeah, Paula, Jeff wants to know a little bit about your background because he came in a little late.
Oh, okay. So for those who don't know me, my name is Paula Nicole Good. I'm a registered nurse and I'm also a mindset transformation coach. And I primarily help women heal from past experiences, usually past trauma within their relationships, but our relationships are usually an indicator of other past trauma with our childhood. So I help people heal from those past childhood experiences, help you really become authentic with who you are, get clarity around your self identity, and also really start getting into your passion and your purpose in life so you can show up, live your life, be happy, live your dream life based on what you think it is, whether you want to make $1 million or whether you just want to be a family person. And that's what I do.
Awesome. So, Horace, I see you, boo. I just sent you the link, baby. It's going to be a conversation. So Horace, just to giving everybody some background, Horace went through just as much, some loss, and he went through a devastating loss as well. I think it wasn't last year, it was year before last, before we shut down. And I think that one of the things is understanding is, in particular, I like having these conversations because we do need to hear more from, in my opinion, from men, because women are more, we are very vocal, you know what I mean? I think that we find that women are more vocal and open about their grief and their pain, and we're more expressive at times than men are, or whatever. Jeff, you cool? I understand what you got going on with social media being muted, and first and foremost, your mental health is more important to me than ratings and numbers on the show. And you know that. Me and you talk about this all the time. But I appreciate your support. Hey, Candy, Skiggy May, Jamal, love you guys. I think that having these conversations and hearing from men about their experiences with grief and loss. Like I said, Horace had a loss that kind of just shook the whole family because it wasn't expected. You know what I mean? I think that sometimes it's, Horace, check your DM. Sometimes we can accept loss when we see it coming, or when we feel like we have time to prepare it. Whereas when we get blindsided with something, it's harder to deal with. You know what I'm saying? It's like, but at the end of the day, if you don't have an outlet and you don't have a way to deal with grief or loss, period, because you haven't been at the end of the day, you got to be taught. It's a learned behavior, just like anything else, learning how to respond to emotion, because grief, that's an emotion. Learning how to respond and not act out. You know what I'm saying? Most of the time we just act out of grief, but we don't really, we don't respond in a healthy way. And I think that part of that is because we don't have examples. And when you don't have examples of what it is to work through loss and pain, you do what you know, which, if all you know is some type of toxic bad way of lashing out, then that's what you're gonna always do until you make a decision to say, I want to stop. I want to do something different. And like Troy said, reach out and get some help, like whether it's therapy or you know what I'm saying, a group session. It ain't got to be one-on-one. Maybe it's just like if you got a gambling problem and you don't, or AA or anything else, and you don't go to them group, they make you talk. You, after a while, you ain't just gonna sit in that session. You're gonna have to talk, because I think that learning to work through things in a group setting, sometimes that's better than one-on-one, because you feel it's a safe space that's been created for you to be able to have that conversation and talk and connect, and do that. So I think that sometimes, I think that that's the key. You know what I'm saying? But I think also it's understanding the people in your life need to understand you. And I want to talk about love languages, because we only use that in intimate settings, but love languages apply to your relationship with your children, people on your job, how you interact with anybody. What is a love language? How do people respond? Because if you touchy feely and the next person, who grieving ain't touchy feely, and you trying to give them a hug, you finna set it off, because you might trigger that person in the wrong way. You know what I mean? Like, it's kind of, it can get complicated But at the same time, it's not complicated if you really know the person. I'm talking about intimate relationships now. Like if you in an intimate relationship with somebody and they don't know your love language or how you communicate and what you like, you got a problem. Because when the fit hit the shan, that rubber meet the road, you about to have mess around and find out after all of that finna cross over, and then what you got? You know what I'm saying, Trey?
Oh no, absolutely. Um, I never really thought about love languages until these last couple of years. Um, someone in the ringside group had to tell me what my what my love language was. Had to make up a love language. Someone told me, um, Trey, your love language is reciprocity.
Yeah,
And I said, you know what? You're probably right. It probably is my love language. Now that I think about it, I know it's not an official love language. I think out of all the official love languages, I think my love language is acts of service.
yeah,
Um, but I mean, just going back, just moonwalking for a few seconds back to what you were saying before. I think a lot of us just want to feel like, well, a lot of us just need a safe space or some place we feel we can be vulnerable and maybe talk to someone we feel like won't judge us. Because again, sometimes you can have, regardless of what kind of grief or sorrow you're dealing with, you could be experiencing feelings that you may not feel comfortable sharing because you don't want to deal with the judgment. You don't want to deal with people thinking that you need to be committed. You need help. Like
yeah.
seriously, if you're feeling these feelings.
Come
And in many
on.
cases, like, well, I feel this way deep down, but if I tell this person, now they're gonna look at me different. Or if I
Yeah,
tell this other person, they're gonna block me or unfriend me. All
yeah,
just because you're explaining your level of sorrow, your level of grief, what exactly it's doing to you, how it's affected you, how it's changed you, how it's, you know, affecting relationships, your job, so on and so forth. No, I went through all that after my divorce. I went through some of everything. I went through a tsunami of emotions. I went through a tsunami of triggers and,
yeah,
um, a lot of things. I can say I can appreciate the people around me who were there for me, who, helped lift me up and let me know everything was going to be okay, who were in my corner.
right.
Because you definitely need that. You need that, and you need some of everything else. Because, like you were saying, with my divorce most certainly it came out of nowhere. Like I didn't see it happen. Didn't
Wow,
didn't excuse me, didn't see it coming. I was
wow,
like, well, damn.
wow,
And
wow.
I know for me, it was like, yeah, it was really, it affected me the same way it would affect somebody who lost, a family member or death in the family, something like that. And I know originally for me, I was following my own advice. I was going to therapy until I had to fire my therapist because I fired my therapist and made me realize I definitely needed more work. I fired my therapist because of some of the advice she was giving me. I felt like, okay, that's not going to help me. That's not going to
Right.
help what I'm feeling. It sounds cool and everything to, yeah, write this down and write down goals over here or stuff like that. I'm like, it sounded good in theory, but I remember at the time when it happened, I was like, yeah, no,
This ain't working.
this ain't gonna work. It's not
Yeah,
working.
yeah,
I'm pretty sure in another multiverse it may work, but for where I
yeah,
am right now, it's not gonna work.
yeah.
So I made the mistake of doing like what a lot of other people do, and just drowning my sorrows in a lot of alcohol. And ever since then, I've definitely become a 420 advocate, um, which is a trip for people who know me. I grew up, I was a Boy Scout growing up. So I was one of those Boy Scouts that I was definitely one of those kids to go to school, saying only a dope would do dope and drugs are for losers. And that was me 100%.
Right.
You get older and it's like, you know what? Now we in the real world, we paying bills and we dealing with real world issues. I can't judge. I'm not going to judge. I'm not agreeing. I've never told anybody to go do those things, but
Right.
certainly I'm not going to judge you because I've certainly been there, and
Yeah.
it does. It's a case, and I explain to people it's a form of escapism. It's not going to make your problems go away.
Yeah.
It means that hey, for the next few hours or
Yeah.
however long, however much you took, you're not going to be thinking about it.
Right.
Um,
Because when you wake up, it's gonna be right there for you.
It's gonna still be right there. It's gonna be right
Yeah.
there. You wake up in the morning, it's gonna be waking up right next to you, yawning, like, how'd you sleep?
Yeah.
Um, but it doesn't go away until you address it, until you actually take the steps. Get over yourself. You have to. If you feel like the circle of friends you have, you can't be vulnerable with, you need to find, other people you can talk to.
Yeah, I
Or
think that's huge though, Trey, what you're saying, because everybody needs a support system.
you need a
And
support system.
your support system looks different. Like everybody's support system looks very different. Like
Mhm.
there's no one size fits all to a support system. You know what I'm saying? And I think that sometimes that's the challenge for a lot of people. They don't really know what that looks like. And sometimes who you think is in your corner, baby, they're not in your corner. And that makes your grieving process even more painful, and it stretches it out because now you grieving the fact that you betrayed me. So now you got betrayal. You know
Oh,
what I'm saying? On top
that
of
was definitely me. I cut off 2 friendships
wow.
right after my divorce. After learning information, after seeing certain things, one of the guys I cut off was someone that I referred to as my best friend. Both of the guys that I cut off were guys that were in my wedding. They were groomsmen in my wedding. Then you find out information later on. Somebody comes and shows you screenshots, or you see, I'm like, you know what? I ain't fucking with you no more.
Right.
So I know I've certainly dealt with the betrayal, because even just in friendship, it's like, really, nigga, you gonna do that to me? Or, because you never know how folks are. People, regardless if it's men or women, people can be your bestie, your best friends, your homie, your day ones to your face all day long and put up a great act. I mean, a lot of people out here are great actors, but it's like, it really matters. Like, okay, how are you my friend behind my back?
Yeah.
Or behind closed doors, or on social media, or in a Facebook group, or how are you my friend when you're encountering my ex or something like
Yeah.
that. So I found that I definitely had to experience betrayal, and I know my girl makes fun of me all the time when I say, yeah, I dealt with that kind of loss, because there's some folks right now, if I catch them on the street, it's gonna be a problem. It's gonna be
Yeah.
a misunderstanding when I see them. And
Yeah.
that's just like, if I don't hit therapy first, then it's gonna be a problem. Um,
But
but
I like
shout
that you said that. I like that I mean, but that's keeping it real. You got to be honest and keep it real, because what you're not going to do is smile in my face.
right.
But what you're not going to do is play in my face. And black people, we don't what you're not going to do is play in my face and think I'm not going to address it in some shape, form, or fashion. You can get these hands, or you finna get this verbal abuse. It's finna be something, but what I ain't finna do,
It's gonna,
you're not finna just let it ride. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're not, because the more you let it ride, it's weighing on you for not letting it out. Like, you're gonna find a way.
oh yeah, no, the funny thing, the comedy in all this, and my girlfriend, she's a lawyer, and she had to be the one to tell me. Never heard this before. I actually didn't know this. I didn't know this, and my ignorance is kind of funny on this. She had to be the one to tell me, Troy, if you go up and punch someone, that's assault. You can get arrested for
Yeah.
that. And I was like, wait a minute, if it's just 2 men fighting, that should be okay. Right? She's like, no, that's
No.
assault.
That's assault. You going
And I'm
to jail
thinking,
with that.
and she and I, we've had this conversation a few times, and I throw out all these different scenarios. I'm like, now, what if it's a guy that, I don't sneak up behind him, but I actually approach him,
It's
tell
still
him about
You still
himself,
going
and
to
I
jail
punch
on
him,
that.
and we fight. Am I still gonna get arrested? She's like, yes, you could still get arrested.
Yes.
And I promise you, I mean, she'll tell you, I started thinking about all these different scenarios, like, how can I punch a nigga and not go to jail? These are kind of things you think about, like, how
Yeah.
can I was like, can I spit in somebody's face? No, Troy, that's assault. I'm like,
Yes.
what can I do? I'm
Nothing.
like, 'cause some of these niggas out here gotta get it. I
Right.
can't live with it. I'm like, no. But again, that's I think that's what therapy. That's why it's important. That's why it's needed, because we see it on the news on a regular basis.
Yeah.
You see what happens with people who can't address their problems. I mean, what happened? Even I think it's a coincidence we're talking about dealing with loss and grief. What happened in Michigan is a prime
Wow.
example. That's a gentleman
Yes.
who lost his mother, couldn't deal with the pain, lost his mother 3 years ago, and
Yeah.
just released
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
worst way possible.
Yeah.
So if
Lives are
you
lost.
don't,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't matter if you are a man or a woman. If you do not address it, it will come out, and sometimes in the worst ways.
Yeah.
You definitely don't want it to come out in anything fatal. You don't want to, I have to tell myself all the time, you don't want it to come out in a ways that where you're gonna land in jail.
Yeah.
So
But
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
but it happens, and this is what happens when you don't deal with those issues internally, and when you're triggered, and all these different things. Because there's a lot that lead to loss, right? Like, for instance, that example about the guy in Michigan. I mean, there's so many different examples. I mean, yesterday it was Valentine's Day, but that was also the anniversary of the Parkland. We call the
Hmm.
massacre down here, and all because he could not deal with rejection. That's still considered loss, because that if you check back into some of his history and stuff like that, you realize that this kid has some issues that led to his inability to deal with that. So now we start talking about all these incels, and and there's tons of them online. There's tons of them. They on Twitter crazy, but they on Reddit. They everywhere, and it's just like you haven't dealt with some issues in your life, especially as it relates to loss in some capacity, and so now everybody is the enemy.
Hmm.
Because if you don't deal with grief and loss appropriately, you get angry, and you get stuck in the space of anger that turns into bitterness, that turns into other stuff, and now you start again. Now we're lashing out. Now we're doing other things that lead down us. It's a slippery slope if you're not careful. You know what I'm saying? And I want to go back to something that Paula said about her relationship with her mom when her mom passed. Some people do have good relationships, and others don't have good relationships with their mothers, or whether it's your mother or a friend. When people pass away and you're not on quote unquote good terms, and you don't have an opportunity, because they gone,
Hmm.
to turn that relationship around. Now that's something with you, on top of grieving the loss, and we're not saying the loss, it's mostly the absence. Like for me, when my grandmother passed, I knew it was coming, because my grandmother was like like in her mid-80s. Like my grandmother was, but it's the absence of that person's presence that you miss a lot. That was the weight for me, that it's the absence, right? And I think that in that, for some people, when you don't have a chance to turn to maximize that relationship, or turn things in a different direction, or what have you, um if you're not a whole person, and you're not rooted in yourself, in something, or have a good support system, a lot of people feel guilty, and
Hmm.
now guilt turns in to something else, and it's like, well, what do you feel guilty about? Because how do you know your efforts would have worked anyway? How do you know they would have received your endeavor to change things anyway? Because we can't control other people anyway. You know what I'm saying? And I think that that's the big deal, Paula.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right. One of the things that helped me where I did not have to deal with guilt is the fact that I was in therapy prior to my mother passing.
Yeah.
And that came up. I was actually in therapy because, like Troy, I had gone through a divorce and I had to work through all that stuff out. But because once again, the relationships, a lot of the issues you have in your relationships mirror your childhood and everything. My relationship with my mother came up. So with that, I was able to work through things and have the acceptance within me to say, well, I've done what I could do when
Yeah.
it comes to this relationship. So I had that acceptance without the guilt. But I've seen where that guilt has come out. There's been times, like I said, when I used to work in the ICU, you'd have patients in there and you don't see their kids coming around to see them. But then towards the end, when it's like, they're on their last leg, you don't know what to do, if you can save them, then all of a sudden, they want full life support efforts on someone who's like slowly going away. And then just to watch that dynamic happen where they're like, give every single thing. And it's like, it's their guilt that's pushing that. And it was very, of course, during that time, you can't, do any therapy or coaching at that moment, but just to watch it happen was very heartbreaking.
Yeah.
because you saw, the children or the grandchildren or whatever family member is going through those emotions and not being able to do anything except tell us, save her life, save her life, save her life, because they wanted that opportunity to turn things around. But that also goes back to, like, with what I was saying about being able to cope with your emotions. A lot of our coping skills are rooted in our comfort zone of what we know.
Yeah.
And when you only do what you know, when that time comes and everything's hitting the fan, and I always like, I use my trash can example. Picture, a trash can, you're constantly throwing trash in it, throwing trash in it, throwing trash in it. Eventually it starts to overflow, but you're trying to push it down, the bag may rip or just keep overflowing. Those are your emotions that you're not dealing with. You're either going to overflow or they're going to rip on from the bottom down. And then either way, you're going to have trash all over the place that you have to figure it out. So when you're not dealing with those emotions and then you have something heavy like grief comes, trash all over the place.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what that is when you have that guilt. You don't have that acceptance. And then with guilt, a lot of times it becomes shame. And shame is so huge and it's so deep. And the domino effect of shame, I mean, when it goes all over the place, who knows what?
Yeah, yeah, I'm glad you brought in that whole concept of shame because it goes back to something we said earlier in the show about men and just how they express and deal with grief and loss. And when Troy was talking about that safe space, I think that in talking about creating safe spaces, sometimes your safe space is a person and identifying what that looks like. But I think part of the challenge is being able to express what that looks like. You know what I'm saying? So for instance, my friend Jamal reached out to me earlier this week when he found out what happened to my cousin. And he was like, what do you need? He said, if you just need to vent, if you just need to cry, just somebody to sit on the phone, I got you. You know what I'm saying? He's in Atlanta and he was just like, I got you. Jeff does the same thing. And I think that being able to identify and define what a safe space looks like, for you dealing with whatever it is you're dealing with, and understanding, having some reassuring, sometimes being a safe space is having that reassuring voice that you did nothing wrong, especially when you didn't do anything wrong, you know what I'm saying? And working through guilt and, like you said, Paula, shame and all of it, because it is a domino effect. It rolls downhill, and how quickly it can roll downhill really depends on that safe space, and that support system that Troy was talking about. If you don't have that and you're not careful, like Jeff said, you got to be careful who you talk to, because them people might just be looking for gossip to go screenshot, like Trey was saying, screenshot and sharing to somebody else and sharing somebody else and sharing somebody. It's like, okay, I mean, am I running out of room on my block list? You know what I mean? Like, for real, because I'm not going to relocate nowhere. Like, it's crazy, but all of this happens, you know what I'm saying? And it's real. And now we have social media that adds. Sometimes it can be a good thing, and other times it can be very toxic and unhealthy for you. You know what I'm saying? And as much as you try to step away, there's always people in your circle somewhere, whether they're acquaintances or whatever, trying to suck you back into foolishness. It's just like, okay, you just showing me that you're not a safe space. You're really not on my side the way you say you do. You're not, everybody is not happy about your growth. So when it comes to loss, here's the thing about grief and loss we have to look at too, especially when it's friends, they not happy about it. So they want you to be miserable as they grieve the loss of you. So now they find other ways through people who still connected to you to make you feel some type of way, to draw you into drama. Ain't nobody got time for that. But they'll try to. Or even on your job, they'll sit there and grin and Kiki, you okay, Kiki, if you want to, you got a promotion. Okay, great. But you know full well you don't know what you're doing, and I'm not gonna help you. I'm gonna tell you that right now. You already knew that. If I gotta train you and show you how to do the job that you just got paid to do, I need to get your check. Because we're not doing that. You know what I'm saying? Like, I think that after a while we have to be careful that we don't overcompensate for other people's grief and add that on top of ours. We can't, we tend to compound grief and we take on other people's stuff while we still go on with our stuff. And now that grief compounded on ours is weighing on our support system. And then we mad at our support system for saying, yo, because now that's not a safe space. Why? Because you taking advantage, because you don't have the wherewithal to not carry other people's grief into, because they didn't sign up for that person's grief. You know what I'm saying? So I think that we it's a lot. It's, you know what I'm saying? It's levels to it, but at the same time, it's when you're in the middle of it and you're in the thick of it, it's very hard to see. And sometimes grief can be debilitating. Loss can be debilitating to the point that you feel like you cannot breathe. Like you really feel like you can't breathe. You can't let up. And so I think that it's important that we start defining what that safe space looks like. And thank God for your girlfriend, Troy, because baby, we don't need to be in jail. Like we ain't got time to no bail money, ringside. You doing
I need y'all to get that bail money ready just in case, because no, she definitely had to be the voice of reason in my ear, because I told her, I was like, yo, if it was something, my issue or my grievance with, someone else, it's one thing. Maybe if it was an issue just small enough to where we can talk it out. But I was like, yo, as a man, some things we just need to fight about.
Fight
Sometimes we just need to get it out. And I'm the one.
You are not in college anymore. Where stuff stay on campus.
Well, yeah, but now it's like, because I really was like they can take me to jail just for punching a man.
Yes.
And he fight back.
Yes.
We can have a full on fight.
Both of y'all up in there.
And I'm sitting up there like, dag, like you can. It's like, what did Jay-Z say in the song? You can't even spill on a nigga, motherfuckers a sue. It's like, damn. And so it's like, well, how are we supposed to resolve this?
Yeah.
How are we supposed to resolve this to my satisfaction? Because I ain't gonna be satisfied until you got a fat lip.
But I think that, but Troy, that's a good point though, because sometimes you got to grieve the fact that you didn't get the justice you felt. Like, can we be honest? Like sometimes grief has to do with I didn't get justice. Because when you don't get, like, that's what you're talking about. I didn't get justice. Because it can be resolved, but not to your satisfaction. I mean, I didn't get justice. So now how do I grieve the fact that I didn't get justice?
Well, I definitely
and I got a deal.
I had one or two church people in my ear with that, vengeance is mine, says the Lord. And I'm like, well, Lord, sometimes take too long. I need to be an extension. I need to be the Lord's little helper, because he got other stuff he got going on. Let me do that. Let me take care of that. But I do want to address something that, may ruffle some feathers, as far as, some feathers at the barbershop with or the fry house. But I'm definitely a man who subscribes and understands the whole point of toxic masculinity. I know a lot of people don't feel like there is a such thing, but I do feel like, no, there is a such thing when masculinity can become toxic. And I think using the need, the want, desire, and utility to express yourself, express your feelings, your emotions, having a safe space, a lot of men, and that's very toxic. And it kind of goes to what I was saying earlier. If you are a boy being raised by men who tell you that only women cry or only women express emotions or emotional, a lot of the men that we deal with now in their 30s and 40s, these are messages that have been programmed in them since we were little boys. Mm-hmm. So it's like you struggle with that. It's like, yo, I'm a man, I want to be viewed and seen by the people I love and trust as a man. But if I do this, then what are they going to think of me? Even if I do this and it may help, I may have so much negativity inside, or I may need to talk to someone. I may need to just sit up and cry. But if I cry, then what are they going to think about me? Are they going to respect me the same? Are they going to think of me as a man? Are they going to think of me, as a masculine man? Or hell, are they going to think of you as heterosexual? Mm-hmm. So these are many of these are the reasons why a lot of Black men don't. We just don't. dive into your work or go to the gym, or, if you, like in my case, if you're dealing with a bad breakup or if you're dealing with a divorce, people will say, well, just go, fuck something else. That's how you get over it.
Yeah.
That's how you
Yeah,
deal
they
with
do
like
tell you that. They do tell you that. Get up on it. The best way to get over one is to get under a new one.
right.
Right.
Yeah, and especially as a man, I've definitely been given that advice. You're told that, you're told, you're said, look, this, as a man, as a bruh, this is what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Women do this other stuff, and it's like,
Yeah.
but the other stuff is probably healthy. It's probably
Right.
healthier,
Yeah.
and it won't cause me to get a disease or hurt or die.
Yeah.
But that's what men do. That's
Yeah.
part of being a man. That's part of being an alpha man. I'm like, I don't
But
know,
yeah,
homie.
and that's the crazy thing, because you can be an alpha man and not do all of that. You know what I'm saying? I think that there are times where generationally, I call it generational foolishness, because it's really tearing us down, because none of that actually worked then.
Mhm.
But it may have in that unique situation, but that was that person's unique situation. And a lot of times folks will give advice based off of what worked for their unique situation, and now it's a whole thing that the whole community got to accept. And it's like, but that's killing us. That's really not helping. That's destroying the Black family structure. That's really destroying us. And that's something collectively to grieve, because the Black family structure is not what it used to be, because we looking at all this kind of stuff, and like you said, Troy, that's not masculine, that's not this, that's not that. But holding that stuff in got you beating somebody's head and bashing somebody's head into a wall. And now we're dealing with domestic violence. Now we're
Oh
dealing
yeah.
with this. Now we got kids growing up without parents and all this other kind of stuff. And mama dead because daddy he can't control his anger and bashed the head in. Now the kids in foster care because ain't no, it's a domino effect, and it don't make sense. But it's like, what in the world? You know what I mean? Like,
It's what many of us have been taught.
yeah,
Regardless if I'm going through the loss of a loved one or divorce, breakup, fire from a job, whatever the case may be, it's seen as healthier for me to be perched at a bar with, half a bottle of vodka finished versus me talking to someone, even possibly getting emotional and crying.
yeah,
That's bad. Go
yeah.
to a bar. That's manhood. That's masculine. Or what did like I always
And
tell this
mess
joke.
around, have your liver, and now
Oh
you
yeah.
got
Well,
colostomy
cirrhosis,
because your liver gone.
yeah, develop liver cancer, but that's a minor
Yeah,
thing. You know, Niggas can deal with that. It's
yeah,
like when I was in high school, I used to watch Steve Harvey's show. I remember Steve Harvey made a comment. I deal with feelings and emotions the way a real man does. I just stuff them all the way down until they manifest into a health problem. It was a
Mhm.
joke,
but it's
but let's be
real.
honest. A lot of people, that's what we do. That's what we're taught.
Yeah,
Yep.
You know what I
yeah.
mean? You
He
deal
was
with.
being sarcastic, but he was. It was a great way to express what we really do and how stupid
Mhm.
that is, because that's what's killing you.
Yep.
Yeah,
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I mean, and you're right. Even though I remember that episode because I remember the situation that caused it. I remember, and I'm thinking to myself, that can't be healthy. It just
yeah,
can't. But it's what we are taught. It's
yeah,
what when you're dealing with grief and loss as a man, you're not supposed to deal with it the same way a woman deals with it.
yeah,
And so with that, it's like, okay, this is kind of toxic. This is kind of jacked up. People shouldn't be dealing with this. But at the
yeah,
end of the day, it's like we have to. It doesn't matter your gender, doesn't matter your upbringing, doesn't matter your sexuality. You have to have healthy ways to deal with grief because we're all going to deal with grief on some level.
yeah,
You give it enough time, we're all going to be dealing with some type of grief and loss, but you need to do it in a way that it doesn't potentiate you disease, heart
yeah.
attack, jail,
Right.
anything. You know what I'm saying? Stay home.
Please don't go to jail.
Yeah, no, I tell people like, yo, I'm too pretty to go to jail. I ain't gonna make
Yeah,
it. I
yeah.
just ain't gonna make it. I'm one of them niggas. I tell people as much as I like gangster movies, I tell people, no, yo, the cops come knocking on my door, I'm snitching. I'm telling them. I'm telling on the doctor that slapped me on the ass. I'm telling on it. I'm like, everybody got to go. I ain't going to jail. I'm just not.
Can't.
I
I
know I
can't.
took a vow. I may have taken a vow of silence and omerta and all that stuff. No, the first nigga that looked like he law enforcement, I'm volunteering. I'm snitching. Everybody.
I can't deal.
I,
Paula,
yo, I'm that nigga. I'm snitching to the rent a cop at the mall. I'm like, yo, just letting you know
It was
it was this finger working. I know how to point at people. Because again, I tell people, I would, I'll tell them, I'm like, look, I ain't going to jail. Take that, you know, hey, by any means necessary, I'm avoiding jail time.
Paula, Paula,
I mean, really, how many of y'all can y'all imagine me in jail?
nope.
No.
they gonna make it.
Dialing every number.
They gonna make it.
I need you to get me up out of here.
Yeah, I'm gonna be calling somebody. I'm gonna be calling Ben Crump. I'm gonna make whatever happened to me. I'm gonna make it was racist. Niggas were racist. Yeah, they were black too, but they were racist. Bring your ass down here, Ben Crump. Get me out of jail. Somebody, I'm gonna call that one phone call. I'm gonna call the wokest nigga on the planet. Get me out of jail. So
God.
again, I'm all about find me if you're out there. Find me at my website www.isnitch.com/on you. So because I ain't going to prison. What else?
Paula Horse wants to know, what do you think about toxic masculinity? Oh,
I'm going to address Horace, and I also want to address something that Troy said. So when it comes to toxic masculinity, I do agree it exists. And what I see a lot of times on social media from men is I think they confuse it. I think they think masculinity is toxic. But the truth is there's masculinity, there's healthy masculinity, and then there's toxic masculinity. And there is definitely a line between the two. And we really have to get clear on what toxic masculinity is and how it's formed. And a lot of times, I'll just go back to what I've been saying. It's formed because a lot of times men are taught to ignore all other emotions, but allow anger because, anger is not considered feminine, but sadness, grief, or whatever, happiness, whatever is. So you don't deal with those emotions. And if you only have certain emotions that are along the lines of anger and you only identify with that, then you do have that toxic masculinity. And it may come out in your words and your actions. And it doesn't even have to be that you're in a moment of being angry. It could just be your whole expectations of a situation in your relationship and how you view women or how you view gender roles. And that can become toxic. So you have to really get clear on what healthy masculinity is. And it doesn't mean that you're being like a woman. You're just being a human. Like, let's get back to being human and understand when it comes to the human brain, we all have emotions regardless of gender. And the brain needs to function to have all those emotions.
Yeah.
And that rolls me into my next point of what Troy was saying when he was talking about Steve Harvey's show. Well, there is a connection between your mind and your body, right?
Yeah.
So you're holding in all this trauma, you're holding in all these emotions, you're holding in all this grief. Well, your feelings and all those emotions are being internalized. And if you think about it, our body is made up of different cells. And when we hold all that in, it impacts us at our cellular level, right?
Yeah.
So our organs are made up of these cells. So our organs are now impacted, right? So your immune system is your gut, your stomach, your intestines, whatever. And that's going to be impacted a lot. And when your immune system's impacted, it becomes overloaded. It can't regulate your body. So when you start having other issues happen, maybe, you don't eat well, or maybe, you have a genetic history. When that impacts your body can't heal. Your body can't fight it off like it's supposed to.
Right.
Yeah, it may not show up right away, but give yourself a few years, give yourself 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Then you start having all these chronic issues. You start having, and it starts out small. You might start out with like the ulcers or the constant heartburn. For me, and I actually dealt with being sick due to stress. For me, it was gastritis. I had rashes. that were you couldn't explain. I would break out in hives every day at a certain time. I
Wow.
didn't connect the two, but it was about, it was within my marriage. There was a certain time, where I had to face a certain situation. I break out in hives because of the stress. I had headaches.
Wow.
I was on all kinds of medicine, and medicines have side effects. So I would be given one medicine to combat the side effects of all these other medicines. So these
Mm,
antidepressants aren't working. Well, I wasn't clinically depressed. I was holding in so much stress. I made myself sick.
yeah.
Luckily for me, I was able to uh, be in contact with a healthcare practitioner that was able to say, hey, we can continue uh, going through all these procedures and giving you all this medicine, you wasting your money, or you could deal with the stress. So luckily I had that person come in. But for those of us who don't have that, we go into long-term conditions. You have hypertension, and diabetes and hypertension go hand in hand. You start having this weight gain where you don't know how to lose the weight because it's not due
It's
to
stress.
poor eating or lack of exercise. It's all those cortisol levels because you have this high stress. You're not sleeping, and a lot of people underestimate sleep. If you're someone who's all about that hustle culture, I work, no sleep, you need sleep. Your body heals when you sleep. Your brain
Yeah.
needs
It's
you
a
to
whole reset process.
heal. Yeah, there's a whole sleep culture in your brain, and your body does its healing while you're sleeping. So if you're depriving yourself of sleep, you're depriving yourself of your body healing. And then you're unbalanced, and you have all kinds of other domino effects happening, all kinds of stuff happening.
Yeah.
So you do have to do that inner work. You do have to do that healing. And it starts with allowing all of your emotions to show up. And
Yeah.
it's not being feminine, it's being a healthy human being.
I
That's
have
good. Trey. Go ahead,
I have,
Trey.
I have a question for Paula. As a mindset transformation coach, as well as a nurse, I mean, you interact with a lot of men and women who are going through grief and loss. Do you think? I mean, we hear about these stories occasionally. Do you, as a nurse, do you feel like that someone's way being said that someone died of a broken heart? Do you
Right.
think that's a legitimate or a real cause of death? I've heard that maybe a few times in my life where someone will die and they say, "Well, he died of a broken heart."
Broken heart.
Yeah. Yeah, I do believe it's true. And I wish I could remember something. I actually just read about it recently where it really talked about the whole physical aspect that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, that internal grief creates such immense stress
Yes.
that it does impact your cardiovascular system.
Yeah. A lady, one of my mom's classmates, buried her older brother, and then maybe 2 weeks later, the mother died. And they said literally it was a broken heart. They believe it was a broken heart because that was her oldest and her only son.
Yeah.
And so I do believe that that happens, and you see it, but it's like I like to follow Dr. Caroline Leaf, and she's not the only person who does science study on the brain and its relationship with the rest of the body. But we have to understand that the brain is a muscle. You know what I'm saying? It's every bit of a muscle as anything else. And so, but it controls your body, like it sends signals to your body. And like Paula is saying, if your brain, if you're not giving your brain time to reboot at night and heal and reset and restart, because that actually happens. There's scientific evidence that that happens at night when you sleep. You're really doing yourself a disservice because you're not allowing your body to do what it needs to do. I'm 30 pounds from my goal. I've been 30 pounds from my goal for a while. Last year was terrible for me because it was just a lot of stress, not just with losing my family members. The company I worked for abruptly closed, and there was just a lot of stress. And so you have to make a decision. Like I had to make a decision that I refuse to allow grief and loss and destruction and life, because life gonna life. And I was like, life is life, and like life has never life before. But I refuse to allow it to hold me hostage. Even with this situation with my cousin, I heard, and I did something that I've never done. in my entire adult life, I took off to just grieve and process. I've never done that before because I never felt that I could. Because as a Black woman, I never felt that I had permission that I could actually do that. But I was just like, I can't and I'm not. So I took off. I took the time I needed to process what you said, what happened. And then, Tuesday, give myself time to just let it happen. Just let me feel what I feel, because if I don't allow myself to feel it, then I'm gonna stay here. And if I stay here, that is how it holds me hostage. And I refuse to do that. And so today was the first day that I felt the heaviness lift. I'm still sad, but it's like, okay, like I gotta talk it through. You know what I'm saying? Like I gotta talk it through and then dealing with it and taking tips and all of this kind of stuff, because everybody deals with things differently and looking at it. And so I think that, understanding the relationship of stress as it relates to grief and loss, because that is a part of it, and how it impacts us as people. You still got to be responsible for what happens to you. And if you don't deal with it properly, you can mess yourself up. You know what, Horace, I want to love you. Talking about you vowed to be future. I hate you right now. I swear you stupid, but I get what you're saying. But this is a good point. Horace says that he mentally was out of it after that breakup. And when you check out, you just rolling. You're not really being intentional and being in the present and in the moment. So now you're not approaching life with intentionality. And that's not healthy either. You know what I mean? And so I think that we have to understand that with grief and loss and all of that, it affects every relationship, whether it's your friendships, intimate relationships, professional relationships, your relationship with your kids, if you have children, everything. It affects everything, and how you respond to it and how you deal with it.
Really quickly, I want to put it out there. It also, for the people, if you've experienced the loss of a pet, you're included as well.
Yes.
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 Don't think it's not. People are like, oh, get a pet. Love a pet. Let that pet be part. Let me tell you something. This week, my rabbit, I done got on his nerves. I swear. I think my rabbit. He's in his playpen. I swear, my rabbit probably thinks, Mommy, I've had all the attention that I can suffer. It'll go away. Because normally he's attention hog. Like rabbits want attention. I think my rabbit is just like, Mom, I go away, Mommy. It's too much. You need to get out. Like, move, go away. Leave me alone or something, right?
Your rabbit is pleading for some me time.
Right. My rabbit is just looking at me like, please don't get in here. Leave me alone. You know what I mean? Like, go away. Leave me alone. But yeah, rabbits are just like your pets are like children, like fur pets. They're like children. And so you do have to thinking out, it's really important. Yes, I have a rabbit. Horace, leave me alone. His name is Mink. He is a velveteen rabbit. Leave him alone. He's like 4.5 pounds. So yeah. But yeah, it's important that you realize that. And yeah, checking out is not addressing the loss. You've decided to basically ignore it and not facing it. Yeah, not facing it doesn't help you. It hurts you. And so if you're trying to get healthy in your body, but you're not facing issues and situations of grief and loss and pain, then guess what? You're doing the opposite. You're defeating the purpose, because I can literally be working out. I can literally be doing what I'm supposed to do with my food, but because of stress and extra cortisol levels, it's doing the exact opposite of what I needed, not wanted to do, but needed to do. So now any diagnosis that you may have or might be on the cusp of having, instead of reversing, you're moving in that direction.
I think that, for some people, they want to I think they feel like ignoring it is taking the easy way out. Yeah. Or it's like, because it's like, if you don't want to, regardless of what it is in life, if you don't want to deal with something or confront something, it's just, well, I'm gonna just sidestep it. I'm gonna just ignore it, pretend it doesn't exist, going about my life like normal, and everything will be okay. It's very foolhardy to feel that way, but a lot of us have been there. I'm not gonna say everybody, but I think a lot of us have tried to just try to ignore pain, ignore grief. And again, like, I've done that. I certainly, it's kind of jacked up. Let me tell you something. True story. It's kind of jacked up when you go to the liquor store and they start remembering you, and they start knowing you and start knowing
That's
your
a
brand.
problem, sir.
It's
That's
like,
a
you know what? It's like, I'm gonna need y'all not to remember me, or at least
yeah.
pretend like you don't see me a lot. But
Pretend like you don't know what I'm about to buy.
right,
Right.
you see me walk through the you
Yeah.
don't have to ask me how my Christmas was, or
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
don't have to know my birthday.
Yeah.
But again, certain people you shouldn't be on a first name basis with. The person
Yeah.
at the liquor store is one of them. But
Yeah.
maybe
I
you weed,
agree.
maybe you weed man, but that's another story. But when it's all said and done, you can try to escape it. You
Yeah.
can try to hide from it. But again, I've certainly been there. I definitely know what it's like to wake up in the morning and roll over, and your grief and your pain is right there looking at you like, "Hey, you." And so you have to address it. And it's not, again, it's for me, certainly it's not the easiest thing in the world,
Yeah.
not always most convenient. Um, but you know that, okay, it has to be done.
Yeah.
It has to
Yeah.
be, if you're going through the loss or any type of grief, you have to be the one to deal with it. You can have your support system, find that support system, find that quote unquote village.
Yeah.
And again, you have to know and give yourself permission to feel, give yourself permission to express those emotions,
That's it.
forgive yourself, let yourself know. You have to tell yourself and have your own deep introspective conversation like, I'm not a bad person because I feel this way. I'm not a
Yeah.
bad person because I'm going through this.
Yeah.
um, and so these are things that, regardless if you're a man or woman, is vital and it's important, because again, we're all at some point in our lives going to experience grief and loss.
Yeah. This right here is hit home. Give yourself permission, and I think that
Give yourself
that's a
permission.
great way to kind of end the conversation. Give yourself permission. First of all, give yourself self permission to grieve and to be and to deal with the loss. Like my mom says, grief and loss is not limited to death. It's relationships. It's opportunities. It's anything that really causes you some type of pain. But I think that especially as a people, we don't give ourselves permission because sometimes we don't feel like we're allowed. We feel like if we give ourselves permission to grieve and take time off or to do what we need to do to care for ourselves, we're being selfish, or we're going to lose our job because of whatever the case may be, because it's something that it's triggering for us that, okay, I can't take off because if I don't, I'm losing my job. And if I lose my job, I can't pay my bills. I can't do this. You know what I'm saying? And when it's like, but if you don't, what's gonna happen? I was in BJ's today, and the girl was on the phone, and she was telling her friend, "Girl, that job, like, what you doing?" And the long and skinny of it was the girl sitting here on the cusp of high blood pressure, about to stroke out over a job. I said, "Girl, before your body cold, they're gonna have somebody else to do it." I said, "We can get another. They can get somebody else to do that job, but we can't get another you." And I said that repeatedly on this show, and I'm gonna keep saying it. We can get somebody else to do whatever function, but at the end of the day, you're more than a function. You're a person, and we can't get another you. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that once we, especially as a Black community, understand how to properly address grief and loss in a context that makes sense for us. And I think, Troy, you hit it. Give yourself permission. And what that looks like, you'll be all right. But until we do that, I think it's a cycle, and it's going to continue to affect our relationships. And and then you got to ask yourself, well, why don't my relationships work? Why my friendships always die? Why this always happen? Why that always happen? Da da da. Why don't nobody want to be? Maybe turning that mirror on yourself and doing the work. You know what I'm saying? And we talk about therapy. Understand that it's not easy getting a therapist, because that's a relationship. Okay, getting a therapist, that's a relationship with somebody that you can trust. It takes time to find a good therapist that you gel with. And just because this person that referred you gels with that therapist, that doesn't mean you are, because you are a unique person. And their style
What
may
dates
not
and
work for you.
therapists?
Yeah, you gotta, it takes some time, but once you get one, stick with it. It's just like somebody doing your hair. Once you find that good barber, once you find that good stylist, you won't be changing, because they do right by you. That's a relationship. This is
Hmm.
a trust thing, baby. You know what I'm saying? So Y'all, we thank you so much for tuning in to us tonight. The next show is in 2 weeks, and we looking forward to it. We're excited to be back. We appreciate y'all for tuning in. We ran a little bit over, but we're glad that y'all are rolling with us and back in the thick of it. And yeah, dealing with trauma, acting like it doesn't happen, and it absolutely affects every part of your life. So yeah, you guys, we're so excited. Thank you all for tuning in with us. We'll catch y'all in 2 weeks for another great Black ass conversation with me, Troy, and Paula. And maybe I may be able to pull Horace in. We'll see how it goes. See y'all next time. Thank you for tuning in with us. Have a good night.
Get that.